Welcome to another episode of Co-op Soapbox. I am Butter Toast. Below me is Rodon, and above me is Aaron. We got a few things to cover today. We've big news. Gamestop shot up. Their stock price just went through the roof this past week. Their highest was I think about $460.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
it
four
was
hundred
somewhere
sixty-eight
around.
dollars last time I checked. So, so this was a concerted effort by Wall Street Bets on Reddit. And I've definitely bought into some of the hype as well. Uh, um, what's your guys' take on all of this?
Well, as somebody who even knew what Wall Street Bets was doing before all of the crazy stuff got
Mm-hmm.
kicked off, I knew about the GME stuff back when it was still $5 a share. I was stupid and didn't buy in, um, but you can never really tell when it's a good time to do that stuff, and then things pass you by. But
True.
um, I saw the community just absolutely melt down as the stock price just shot up. Um, and then, I go to bed, wake up the next morning, and then everybody is talking about GameStop stock,
Mm-hmm.
and it's up $300.
Well, and it's
Uh,
not just GameStop too. It's BlackBerry and AMC are the two other big ones that people have been looking at. Um, but even worse, Robinhood during all this craziness, they restricted how many shares a user could buy to one share. This was published on the 31st of January. And I guess a lot of so one second. um So yeah, Robinhood said that for users whose holdings already exceeded those numbers, positions will not be sold or closed. However, you will not be able to open more positions of each of these securities unless you sell enough of your holdings such that you are below the respective limit. So of course, the Wall Street Bets community, like was rather convinced that this was a form of insider trading. I mean, I'm not a stockbroker. I have no um I'm a layman here, but it seemed pretty shady. Um, Not only that, but I guess Citadel was a a primary backer of Robinhood, and Citadel was one of the hedge funds that performed badly because of this in terms of they were trying to short, and then they lost a lot of money because what Wall Street Bets did. I think the correct term is a short squeeze. Like I said, I'm not
as
too sure.
as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, as I understand it, the um, hedge fund company, Melvin Capital,
Mm,
was short selling a bunch of GameStop stocks in order to turn a profit because physical retail game sales are going to go down, and these businesses are likely to be put out of business if they retain a strict um, physical video game selling model.
right.
So they were essentially um, buying shares that didn't really exist, and this created some tension within the market. And when retail investors, meaning you and I, regular people all around, saw that happening, especially on r/Wall Street Bets, they started buying in and buying in and buying in and buying in, and this inflated the price of the stock massively to the point where there are tons of people on Wall Street Bets that became millionaires off of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Well, kind of.
well, I mean,
Yeah,
the
to
the
say they
fact
all
the
turned
fact
into
remains.
millionaires is a
I'm not
little.
saying I didn't say they all turned into millionaires. I said
No,
there are
no,
many
yeah.
people. I said there are many people that have turned into millionaires off of this, which is just true.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you count the stock that they hold as being capital. Um, because even as we speak, the share price for GameStop is $89 as opposed to the $5, $3 that it was previously.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and after that, not Capital, Citadel moved in to assist um, Melvin Capital with all of their losses because they're taking on huge losses from people buying into this stock and inflating the price when for them the price was supposed to continue to go down.
Mm-hmm.
And then Robinhood, a popular retail investing app, um, limited the shares that people could purchase from not only GameStop but also companies like AMC, BlackBerry,
Yeah, it
and
wasn't
have
just GameStop. It was so AMC, BlackBerry, XPR, which is Express Inc., Genius Brands. At least it looks like on here these are the stocks that have been limited. Nokia was one of them too. Um, which I just thought was interesting that you would limit buying stock options. It just doesn't
right.
make any sense, you know.
And well, I mean, it's saving the hides of the hedge fund managers, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's
Well,
then
yeah.
artificially dropping the price of the stock, so that they can try to
Or
recoup the
attempting to
losses.
artificially drop it.
Yeah, and it worked for a day, and then once trading opened back up, people went to other brokers, and the price shot right back up to 300.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it is
Yeah.
back down again, and
It
now
it's at
shares are
89 right now.
yeah, and now shares on Robinhood are still being limited, but not restricted in such a way that retail investors could only get one share of like GameStop stock, for instance. I think that has been raised significantly to like 100 shares.
Mhm.
Um, you might have the details on that. I don't know the precise figure.
I
Um,
don't either, but yeah, no, it was some interesting information. I'd like to see how it plays out. Being able to collectively like harm hedge funds is it's not something I've ever seen, like ever. I mean, granted, I'm only 25, but it's something I've never seen in my life.
I think it's something we didn't expect to see either.
Mm-hmm.
It's not entirely unprecedented though. This sort of thing has happened in the past. Just it's not frequent. It's not often. It's actually very rare. And I think this might be the first largest example of our lifetimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but it's happened before.
So
It's just
yeah, so going further, Wall Street short sellers have cut their losses in GameStop. The GameStop strategy seems to have worked, says the New York Times. The headline grabbing surge in the video game retailer shares last month came as a group of traders organized on Reddit and other online forums set out to inflict financial pain on Wall Street. Institutions, those hedge funds had placed large bets against GameStop, a process known as shorting the stock, which is something similar to what we saw in the 2008 uh, uh, housing crisis. A lot of hedge funds shorted on a lot of mortgage CDOs and led to that crash. Um, Thankfully, again, Wall Street bets caught this for GameStop. So furthermore, if the price rose enough, they would be sitting on huge losses and eventually be forced to rush out on of those positions in what's called a short squeeze. The GME short squeeze has begun. Ro Ihor Dusansky, a managing director at S3, referring to GameStop by its stock trading symbol. He said the stock short sellers are now down more than $13 billion. And bear in mind, this article was written, I think, uh, on the 1st of February.
Should be up at the top of the article.
It doesn't show here, but if I go to the very top, yeah, it last updated on the 2nd of February. So as of February 2nd, it looks like that these hedge funds have lost $13 billion due to this.
And as exciting as this all is for everyone, and especially retail investors, um, knowing that they can have this sort of huge effect on the stock market is pretty empowering. And I'd say that funnily enough, this is one of the most empowering moments for the working class in America and possibly around the world that we've seen in this kind of way, completely screwing over the guys at the top and making some people down, closer to the bottom, quite a bit more money. We have also recently seen the strikes in India, which have been huge, which is another fantastic example of the working class solidarity that's starting to slowly build over the world. But having a forum of Redditors come together and move the stock market in such a way that it rouses so many people, it's really interesting because it wasn't even leftists doing it. The
Yeah.
leftists are not the ones doing the work here. They're mostly capitalists,
Well, and one thing I
which is
noticed,
funny.
I don't know if we could call them capitalists, just because I mean, we don't even know how many of those people have ownership of means of they might like capitalism, but I wouldn't necessarily call them
Capitalist
capitalists.
sympathizers, I think is what he's trying to say.
Yeah. Um but like, I mean, like Melvin, they sustained a 53% loss for the month of January because of this. I mean, this is like unprecedented. And you're absolutely right. There is a stream of like hopefully some level of like, class consciousness that grows from this. And I've been browsing, Wall Street bets from here and there. It can be a bit of a toxic community sometimes, but with all of that aside, there is a level of understanding that with the 8 million people that have joined that subreddit as of recording this, um there does seem to be a better understanding that the big guys uh won't necessarily always win, and we have the means to be able to collectively redistribute wealth. And a lot of the stories from like Wall Street Bets are like talking about how like they're able to pay for like college tuition, a hospital bill, or like they're able to buy a house for their parents. Like this money is being recirculated into the economy.
Yeah, which is certainly a net benefit, I would say, um, because even any amount of wealth distribution or redistribution is hard to do, and we've seen how hard it is to do with the way that our government acts,
Mm-hmm.
about redistributing some of the funds, in the form of stimulus, whatever it may be, whether it's checks, unemployment insurance, what have you. Um, and this is a very polarizing shift for a lot of people. There are people that I know that are much more conservative than I am, that look at this with like a real like, hey, fuck the hedge fund people kind of mentality. And it's interesting to see that, and I think that it's actually quite good to see more of that sentiment, that kind of um, and kind of anti-wealthy sentiment going on. I think that that's pretty interesting,
Yeah. You.
because it. I apologize. Go ahead.
Oh no, you're fine.
Well, I was just saying that normally people really only care um, if the big guys are getting taken down, if other little people are being raised up, and that's perfectly appropriate. But I've these people that I've spoken with haven't profited off of this at all, and yet they're still rooting for the little guy. They're rooting for the retail traders, the redditors, the everyday exchangers, the day traders, and that's it's very interesting.
Absolutely. You brought up stimulus earlier, and that's a good segue to our next topic. Um. So, um, apparently, as of January 25th, the measures to get another stimulus check and all that fun stuff has been halted. So, Mike DeBoni of the Washington Post, when Biden took office last week, he promised sweeping bipartisan legislation to solve the coronavirus pandemic, fix the economy, and overhaul immigration. Just days later, the Senate ground to a halt with Democrats and Republicans unable to agree on even basic rules, surprise, on how the evenly divided body should operate. Meanwhile, key Republicans have quickly signaled discomfort or outright dismissal of the cornerstone of Biden's early legislative agenda at 1.9 trillion pandemic relief plan that includes measures such as $1,400 stimulus checks, vaccine distribution funding, and a $15 minimum wage. On top of that, senators are preparing for a wrenching second impeachment trial for former President Donald Trump, set to begin February 9th, which could mire all other Senate business and further obliterate any hopes for cross-party cooperation. Taken together, this gridlock could imperil Biden's entire early presidency, making it impossible for him to deliver on key promises, blah, 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 blah.
Well, at to this point, I believe that the Senate has gone ahead and they have had a confirmation vote
Mm-hmm.
to determine whether or not they're going to use budget reconciliation um, for this relief proposal, and it passed within the margins that it needed to. It had no Republican support,
Right.
um, and so I mean, we know that the Republicans' call for unity is horseshit. It's
Oh, of
bullshit.
course. Yeah.
It
It's literally like, when an abuser says, hey, I just beat the shit out of you, but if you go to the cops, you're going to ruin my life forever.
it's something like that, and it's
Like, especially
it's
after the coup.
we we're gonna host an insurrection attempt at the Capitol, right? We're gonna say that you guys cheated in the election. We're gonna say that the Democrats cheated in the election. And we're going to throw out some crazy fucking conspiracy theories, and we're going to call all Democrats pedophiles and cannibals and whatever. Okay. But then, once the Democratic candidate wins and the Democrats have control of both the Senate and the House, all of a sudden they want a little bit of unity.
Yes.
Get the fuck out of here.
Aaron,
So I don't know if I've been out of touch, but where have you seen the Republicans call for unity? I have not seen that one time in the
they've been
last several
calling,
months.
so like Ted Cruz, for example, has been like calling for like now's the time for cooperation. Um, so
What is he talking? Just a week ago, they were at war with the rest of the country. What unity are they talking about?
this is something that they've
That's
been
exactly
calling
the
for,
point.
like right at yeah, they've been at war with the entire country, but I mean they're playing lip service to like speak for unity, right? Or they
Like I said,
I
I haven't heard them actually say that. What I've been hearing is that the Republican Party is quite literally folding upon itself, like just at war with itself. Congress is actually
yes,
really freaking out. Congressional Republicans are really freaking out over Marjorie Taylor Greene and trying to figure out what to do with her. Some of them are calling for her to be, pushed out of Congress completely. Um, I haven't heard anything about unity. To me, it sounds like they've gone into hiding and they're licking their wounds. Like I don't know what they're
no,
doing.
we've I have certainly seen Republicans calling out for this kind of unity, and it doesn't even just have to
yeah, like
be
the
congressional
rhetoric of like
Republicans.
it's time for healing
Yeah, it
type
it
of
doesn't even
rhetoric.
have to be congressional Republicans.
Yeah.
You can see Republicans in all forms of office, or even just regular Republicans.
That's what I'm
Um,
saying, though. I haven't
you
heard
know,
that. I've either heard silence, like absolute silence, or I've still heard the same old, well, Trump still won, we're still pissed, blah blah blah. I haven't heard any
Well,
message
we're
about
we're
unity.
we're talking about like Republicans within positions of power, not necessarily like, the general public.
And
So am I. So am I. I'm literally saying that too. And again, it's either they've gone completely silent about most things, or some of them are still parroting this crazy conspiracy theory.
well,
I I
oh,
I think Marjorie Taylor is, and a few others like there is a 25-year-old senator who doesn't even like still believes that uh Trump lost unfairly due to fraud. But other than that, like I mean, I've heard from like, Mitch McConnell, Ted Cruz, wanting, a time for healing. That's the rhetoric I've been hearing.
Was this like recent in the last 2 days?
It would have been after the Capitol riots, like probably
Oh,
about,
that's a joke.
yeah.
That's a joke.
But exactly, it is absolutely a joke. It's
Are
a
you
bullshit.
talking about? Okay, wait, hold on a second. Are you talking about when impeachment was being brought up like hardcore, like within the
Yes.
first 2 days afterward? That I don't even consider that. That's their response to the cap. That's their response to the Capitol riot. That's not their response to a democratic new government. That's not their response to Joe Biden or his
No,
presidency.
and it never
That's not
will
their
be.
response.
And
That's not the response to the end of the election. That was the
well,
response only to the riot. That's
right,
it.
but and that's obvious due to like I mean, we're reading the article right now about how Republicans are stonewalling Biden with this legislation that Democrats want to come out with. Um, so yeah, obviously it's all bullshit. You know, that
it's saving face.
yeah,
Because I mean, what else are you supposed to do when there's such a huge schism in your party between the absolute insane motherfuckers who are currently at the head of the culture within the Republican Party, and then you have the traditional Republicans, traditional. I don't. What's a more moderate Republican, if you can even consider people like Mitch McConnell or McCarthy more moderate Republicans. At this point, I think that we can safely say that they are more moderate Republicans compared to the crazy Q cult type, uh, Marjorie Taylor Greene style of Republican that is taking over the Republican Party and
isn't
is trying
Marjorie
to
Green like a
cannibalize.
literal Nazi too? Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure she is.
She is, I believe, if am remembering correctly, she has brought up the Jewish question.
Yeah, like
So,
she is like literally a Nazi.
and she has gone on record saying that she does not denounce any of the things that she had previously said, which is why the Republicans are having such a hard time figuring out what to do with her. And in the meantime, while McCarthy has been trying to figure out what
McCarthy,
do we do,
Mitch McConnell, you mean?
no, McCarthy, the the Republican majority or the Republican leader in the House,
Mitch McConnell.
in the House,
Oh, in the
not
House.
the Senate,
Ah,
in the House, McCarthy.
right.
As McCarthy is trying to figure out what to do with Green, um, his inaction and ultimately his party's inaction is causing things to go even worse for Green, and I would expect Green to be expelled soon. Um, that's just my own prediction. Although many people see it the same way at this point, there's really not much that they can do to save face when a person is actively not trying to save face for themselves.
Correct.
What's going on with
Uh-oh.
Aaron? The
Connection
internet fine?
issues.
Sorry, guys. It kind of just cut out for a bit, so I had to jump out and come back in. My
Oh, okay.
apologies.
No, you're
It's
fine.
all good.
Um, but it's the huge schism within the Republican Party is definitely an issue for them. I think it's fantastic. I think it's one of the best things I've ever seen in my entire life. Um, because I have seen it through my life. I have only seen the Republicans be a solid fucking voting bloc my entire life. And the Democratic Party hasn't been that in my life, right? There have been times where they all voted as a bloc, right? But there are still ideological differences between them that change things. Or your more liberal Democrats, your more moderate Democrats,
Yeah.
and then now your more progressive Democrats like AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, uh, and there's more unity in the Democratic Party in between them than there is between
Yeah.
the Republicans right now. And I think that that's something really interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that develops.
Moving further, President Biden's pitch for bipartisan unity to defeat the coronavirus and resurrect the economy. So yeah, so even Biden is pushing for unity, which just makes no sense. I mean, time and time again, it just hasn't worked, right?
Well, I mean, there are
The
two different views here, but I'll let
Mhm.
Aaron speak.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say that now that doesn't make that's not confusing to me. That's all Biden has been talking about since
Since he was
early
running, yeah.
since he first declared. That's all he's been talking about. We need to unify the country. We need to bring the country back. The country needs to do this. Unity, unity, unity. That's been his campaign message. That's been his transition message, and that's been his message the first, almost 2 weeks he's been in office, or 2 weeks today he's been in office. So um, that that I don't expect the same different. I expect him to continue to talk about unity because he feels that that's his prerogative. And I think most people Dan Paul would agree that Joe Biden is very much a moderate. So
Uh-oh.
um, I just and I would even argue that the Democratic Party, the Democratic Party calling for you, they're the ones who won, ultimately. Um, but I can't get over the Republicans. They literally just started launching a war against everybody. So I don't know. They're dumb.
So
Well, I
yeah,
mean, like I said, go ahead.
Biden's relief package by senior Senate Republicans has been declared DOA. Some Senate Republicans have claimed that Biden has made no outreach to Republicans at all. That's a lot of horseshit. Uh, liberals are demanding the president abandon attempts to make a bipartisan deal altogether and instead ram the massive legislation through without GOP votes. And outside groups are turning up the pressure for Biden and Democrats to control Congress to enact equity relief quickly, even if it means cutting Republicans out of the deal. Which I think this is also part of where filibuster reform comes into play as well, right? Like, Democrats want to get certain bills through. They can't because you have to have a 60% majority. Filibuster reform kind of seeks to eliminate that. Um, I mean that makes sense in
Yeah,
terms of like the
I mean, like,
conversation that we've been having with filibuster reform for I think the last month now or last few weeks. Uh-oh.
did you say something else at the end of your sentence to me?
I think we're having some serious connection issues today. I
You were talking
going
about ending the filibuster.
Yeah, so I think a lot of this just ties into the conversation we've been having with regards to filibuster reform for like the last couple weeks now. Because
I mean, if the Democrats want to retain any sort of power, they have to do it. They have to do it. Like, plain and simple. If this is a political game, which all politics are, okay? This is a political game that is meant for the winner to take it all. Okay? Winner takes all in this system. They just do. And if the Democrats want to retain their power, they have to use their power in order to make sure that these roadblocks that Republicans and other Democrats can just throw out there get taken away. Okay? We don't need the electoral college anymore. We don't need it. We still have it, but we don't need it. That would be a serious constitutional amendment, but I think it's one that we should actively try to pursue. And ending the filibuster, I think, is a good step towards that. Even if the country decided that it didn't want to get rid of the electoral college, but instead institute ranked choice voting, I'm okay with that too.
So one
I'm
of the
okay with
reasons why Republicans saw this as dead on arrival, at least from my interpretation, including liberal quote priorities such as increasing the federal minimum wage to 15 an hour. Some Republicans saw it as a sign Biden wasn't really serious about getting their support. At a certain point, yeah, I'd have to agree. If Republicans are kind of stuck on this, wanting to keep wages at starvation levels, yeah, why should we get their support at this point? I'm not a fan of, the minimum wage raising in 5 years from now or by 2024 or 2025. But I mean, it's better than nothing. But the fact that, raising the minimum wage to 15 an hour is seen as a net negative to Republicans, fuck them. You
So
know?
there was an interesting story about this on NPR today, in which they went into detail about comparing, different minimum wages that we've had in our nation's history, and they talked a lot about how the initial fight, not the initial fight for minimum wage, but the initial fight for raising the minimum wage that started back in 1963, when they what they did is they paired a good portion of the civil rights movement with treating workers fairly. So it was a workers' rights slash civil rights movement march, and it was a massive thing that happened in Washington D.C. for like a couple of weeks. And their fight was the fight to raise it to $2 an hour. And what's interesting is they actually won. There was some compromise between the Johnson administration later on in 64 and 65 and Congress, but they got $2 an hour. What's interesting about that is that if minimum wage kept up with inflation and kept up with productivity levels that also went through the roof over the next couple of decades, when people began fighting for 15 an hour in 2012, it was the equivalent as when people were fighting for $2 an hour. So it was the same amount of a minimum wage. Now, even today, even if we were to pass 15 an hour, it's been, what, 8 years since 2012, 9 years? So
Yeah. Well, no,
it's
because
still,
I remember the conversation. Yeah, the conversation started in 2011. I
yeah.
think the conversation started like right after Occupy Wall Street.
But when that conversation was getting started, they were basing all of their information of what a proper minimum wage would be on that original fight back in 1963. It was $2 that they were fighting for in 1963, which today is the equivalent. Well, in 2011, 2012 was the equivalent of $15. What I'm saying is that even going further, it's been 9 years since then, and inflation has gone through the roof in the last 9 years.
cost of living.
Realistically, cost of living is a huge one, and realistically, we should be fighting for something closer to 21 or 22. Like we can't even cut it now at 15.
Yeah,
That's how quick prices have been changing
That
over the
I
years.
mean, there are places in the country where you can survive off of 15 an hour. Your large major cities, you cannot. Even mid-sized cities, it's getting very difficult to do so.
yeah.
Which
Where
again, I keep watching very closely these stories the Reno Gazette Journal has been spitting out when it comes to housing issues in the
I
region.
saw one of
And
those recently. Like we had the largest increase in rent prices, uh,
yes,
like in recent history, like in the last X amount of years. It was absolutely
correct.
insane.
It's insane. But here's the thing: they've also spit out a bunch of statistics, and one of the recent ones is that in order for a single, like an average person, to afford to live and buy an average home and live in the Reno area and survive, that person needs to make at least 80,000 a year. That's more than what I make. That's more than what both of you make. Like, I mean, we're talking about average people. I'm going to be 30 in a couple of years. Like,
That's
this
more
is
than
insane.
more than what me and my husband make together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean that's it just doesn't make sense at a certain point. And you know, I even did a research paper regarding this, and like, I mean, even renting out a 1-bedroom apartment, on average you would have to make at least 39,000 a year or 41,000 a year. I'm not entirely sure. The average income per capita where we live is about 34,000 a year, well under the average cost of rent for a 1-bedroom apartment.
And if you ask me, if we were to actually update our poverty rates, right? So the federal government they spit out what they consider their standard poverty line, and
I
the
think it's
guidelines
like
of what
$12,000 per person, which is like
yeah,
laughable. And it's
it's
like, you know, for
laughable because
4 people, it's like 27,000.
it's not including housing costs. That's the problem. If you include housing costs, you would have to bump it up to something closer to 30,000, right? Like that would be like the poverty line.
The
You
bare
can't
minimum, yeah.
bare minimum, yeah. So that's my point. So if you're under that, then you're obviously impoverished in this country.
For one
Under
person.
this,
For one person.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to poverty statistics, we're talking about, you know, what the U.S. government pushes out. They say that a family of four, the poverty line is about 27,000 a year, which is about $13 an hour. For a family of 4, you are excluded from benefits.
That would be one income, though.
That would be one income. Yes.
It's just
Doesn't make any
insane.
sense.
Like
That's
you
Mhm.
can't
like
feed 2 people.
1992.
You can't feed 2 people on that, let alone
You can't feed
4.
one person. You can't even feed a single person off of that income.
If you include most basic bills, no, you couldn't feed
Yeah.
a single person who's making that. That's insane.
Yeah.
And see, the real the problem that we have and the problem that we're facing is that the Democrats, in all of their wisdom, have decided to continue to fight for the 15, even though we're well past that point, as previously stated. And we will be far past that point by 2025 when this minimum wage increase will finish, when it will end, when it will come to 15. Now, obviously, there are some problems with that because the cost of living is going to continue to go up over these next 4 years.
Yeah. And a lot of
Inflation is
the
going to
a lot of the
keep going.
increases are usually in large cities. Unfortunately, the vast majority of Americans do not live in rural areas anymore. The vast majority of Americans live in larger cities. You know, gone are the days where you like our 2 most populous cities account for more than 10% of the U.S. population.
I think, you know what? I've been studying politics and government since I was a child, and I still cannot figure out for the life of me why it takes so long to get something like minimum wage bumped up when it needs to be. And I cannot figure out why it takes so long for something like a stimulus package to be passed when it needs to be. They literally do. They did the first round of 3 different bailouts after the 2007-2008 financial crisis within a couple of months. Within a couple of months, they did 3 bailouts.
Well, you answered your own question. You know, it's
And
for
let's not
Yeah,
rich
forget.
people.
I don't accept that. I don't accept that as an answer.
No
I
one
want to know
does.
what the fuck I want to know what the fuck their justification is. What is their justification for wasting everybody's time and for prolonging this as far as they can? And now complaining about 1.9 trillion? Give me a break. We spent $3 trillion on big banks and big bailouts back in 2008. We spent another additional 2 trillion in the last year on big companies just for their stupid bailouts because of COVID.
Well,
What's
we're
wrong with
poor.
another stimulus?
We're the working class. We're not Goldman Sachs. We're not Ford. We're the
That's still-
poors.
I don't
We're
think
the
you understand what
poors.
I'm saying. I don't think you understand what I'm saying. What is their excuse? What is their excuse? They can't come to us and say, well, you're poor, so you don't get it. I want to know what their justification is. I want to know what their excuse for not getting it done is.
I mean,
I don't
does
want
it
to know
really
what we
matter
think
what?
it is.
Does it really matter what their justification is?
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely, it does. They say it, then we have to call. It is our responsibility to call them out on it
but
and
we
get rid
have
of
been
them,
calling
get
them
them
out.
out of government.
We have
they
been calling them out on this.
But they
generally
haven't
they're
been saying. They haven't been saying why. They have never
generally
They
given
don't
us
have
a
to.
reason.
their justification usually comes down to
The economy.
the deficit.
Like the
economy.
deficit, the economy, they use nebulous terms that make no goddamn sense, and then they expect us to shut up and deal with it.
But that's not a justification to
We
not
all
pass
know
big bank bailouts.
we're all aware of that.
We are fully aware of that, and they're fully aware of that, but the majority of the American public isn't aware of that, right? When a majority of like the Republican base, the regular Republican base anyway, is concerned about deficits, even though they really ought
No,
not
they're
to be.
not. They're not concerned about deficits. They're such liars. These are the same exact people who just 10 to 15 years ago diehard supported going into Afghanistan, going into Iraq, going into Syria, going into every fucking country we possibly could, where we literally, that's where we spent the bulk of that stupid debt, has been
Right,
going into all these different wars.
because they're lying to us. They're just liars. Like bottom line is that
Unfortunately,
Yes,
that's just the case. Yeah.
but everybody, if again, if they pay attention to the debt, they know where the money's going, and it has nothing to do with these stupid bailouts. Literally 80%, well, 70 to 80% of that debt went to literally spending it on international conflicts and other wars that we've started in the 21st century.
yes. Yeah, no, the deficit excuse is another nebulous justification.
Not deficit. No. They don't have. Republicans never really bring up the deficit. That's actually Democrats that do. We're talking about the debt. They have a problem with the debt.
I'm pretty sure Republicans bring up like balancing the budget and shrinking the deficit all the time.
They don't care about the deficit.
Yes,
Republicans
they bring it up.
Republicans always destroy the deficit.
Right.
Every Republican president destroys the deficit. Every
we
Democratic
understand
president comes in and they correct the deficit, but they also expand the debt. Those are two very different things. Republicans never talk about the deficit. Republicans talk about the debt, the overall national debt, which has been hovering now at what, 23 trillion or something like that. And it is insane. We all know that. But they are lying to us and they're lying to themselves when they come out and they act like they care about it, because they don't actually truly care about it. They don't care about runaway spending. That's a lie.
Of course it is. We're all aware of that. Of course it's a lie. These idiots.
I mean, you're preaching to the choir. Yeah. And I mean, lest we forget, even just during the pandemic here, what was it? Please, if anybody remembers, correct me, but I believe it was like 3 trillion that was pumped directly into the stock market.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah, and then it like washed away within.
It was 2 different times.
Yeah, it was 2 distinct times, but they were within like a day or 2 of each other.
Oh yeah, it was within a week. Instantly. But yeah, that's my point, and that's my point. So again, something like that can happen so quickly, and yet a stimulus is worthy of debate. Really, stimulating the entire economy, because let's be honest, that's what it is. You give any American $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000.
That's going to go right back into the economy. Yeah, you fix your car problem. Yeah, they're going to put it in an offshore account. But yeah, if you give it to like a poor person who needs that money, who's been jobless, well, now they can fix that problem with their car. That money goes to a local auto body shop. That money goes to pay those employees. You can buy groceries. You go to the grocery store, you go to the supermarket, that money goes to pay for the wages.
If that small business or that auto shop ends up having a surplus for even a month, they end up usually buying new items that they needed for the store. Buying those new items continues the circulation of money. Like this isn't
this is economics 101. Like this isn't even economics 101. This is like literally elementary school. This is elementary school economics. This is like when I went on a field trip to with my school to do this like mock thing where like we did this field trip when I was in elementary school, right? And I was in the 5th grade. It was called Young America Town or whatever. It was literally just another way of like getting you ready for the working world. It that's literally all it was. Funny enough, I got a 0 for not using my checkbook, for using my money responsibly and only using the cash I had on me. I got a 0 for that whole entire field trip. I failed. Like, it was an assignment. They wanted you to use your whole every check you could, and I lost points on that. And like my dad was like, "This is fucking bullshit. You were being responsible with your money." Um, but it was like literally like, us the consumers, us the workers, we give you money. It goes into the economy. Like I learned that shit in 5th fucking grade.
Yeah,
Like
it's
this isn't like you don't need to be an economics major. You don't need your MBA for this shit. This is
and
simple.
it is absolutely laughable to me. Laughable that and I think that this might tie into another segment here. I don't know if that's pulled up, but it's the same realm. Um, it is laughable to me that the Republicans, what they counter offered
Oh yes. Um
as their stimulus plan, as opposed to the Biden administration
a thousand
stimulus plan.
dollars instead of 1,400, and it would actually cut those eligible if you make over $50,000, you are not eligible. If you're
Yeah,
a couple, it's $100,000.
it cuts the eligibility in half, more than half
It,
actually.
not only that, but like you could have made 50,000 last year because this is based off of previous year's taxes. Um, and you could have lost your job very recently.
Mhm.
And let's say you make 55,000 a year, which is enough for you to have your own apartment and a car, and you can reasonably buy food. At least where we live. Like you can have a decent standard of living. You're not like you're not eating steak dinners every night, but you're not like starving.
But you're okay
But you're
generally.
okay. Yeah. Um I mean $50,000 is not a lot of money
Yeah,
per
and
year.
not to mention, even if you are making that amount of money, okay, people still have debts to pay down. They still have car debts, mortgages, whatever. Credit card debt. This pandemic has economically devastated our working class and our country. And every time we try to open up the pocketbook and demand that those people get help, because they've been working throughout this entire crisis, okay? They've been working through this, putting their lives on the line, not seeing an increase in pay from hazard pay, anything like that.
I
No,
I'm
nothing.
I'm one of those people. Yeah, absolutely.
So every
We're
time
all
we try to loosen the purse strings a little bit, the Republicans come back with something insulting, and this is insulting. I think it was already a little insulting for the Democrats to, as they were running for the Georgia Senate race, to consistently say we're going to send out $2,000 checks and then backtrack and
To
do, well, it was at
14.
600 plus the 1,400.
Yeah.
I think that's already spineless and sniveling and you know
hmm
completely worthless. But to come back against a party that won the election and now controls the Senate, the House, and the executive branch, and to say, you know what, we're going to take your bill, strip away everything else except for direct aid, but we're also going to make the direct aid way shittier and it applies to half as many people. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
There is no goddamn way. If I was Biden in this situation, I would have flipped the Republicans off. No fucking way would I ever let them put this shit on my table.
I I
This
you
is
know
insulting, and
I'm
it
at
should
the
be
point
insulting to everyone listening.
I'm at the point where I'm pretty sure the GOP is just the let everyone die party. Like I'm pretty sure the GOP is like literally the let every normal American die party. Like I think it's just absolutely horrific at this point. It's comical. It's like it's like I'm reading a the Onion article. It's almost like um congressman or it's like person A puts forth a bill that barely meets anything for anyone. And then person B is like, I'm just going to take a shit on this piece of paper and offer that. It's literally what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah, it's
not
disgusting.
literally.
You know what's interesting about that comment, like the let people die party or whatever. That's exactly what people were charging about the Republican Party back in 2012, and
Yeah.
the Republican Party of 2012, it was nowhere near as bad as the Republican Party today. That's just so funny to me. It's like things have just gotten so much worse, and yet they're still somehow viable. I don't understand how they're even a viable political party anymore.
You
Because
know,
half of this country is fucking brain dead. I don't want to have to be mean about it, but there comes a point where it's it is these people, Republicans, have been fed this bullshit their entire fucking lives, and it's not even always their fault, right? Not always their fault that they hold those opinions. Some of them can be changed. Your mind has been changed, Aaron. You used to be a Republican, and
A progressive
and um regardless, still a Republican. You know what I'm saying. But you changed your mind about what the party was, what the party was doing, and all of that. But the reality of the situation is that you have been studying, politics your entire life, you said. The majority of people don't pay any closer attention to politics than, oh my God, the president is addressing the US right now on TV. That's it.
We're lucky if they
That is
even do that.
Yeah, exactly. And so you have half of the country that was born Republican. That's how I see it. They were born Republican because they were raised Republican and now they continue to be Republican. If they were not introduced to that party from birth, then they wouldn't be in the Republican Party. I very much doubt it.
Well,
I
to be fair, I think some people would be. I really do. I really do believe
sure,
that some
some
people will
people. Yeah.
independently think that all of this stuff is great and they support it and whatever.
Yeah, I'm not saying that literally no one would be in the Republican Party. That would be definitely a stretch. But in order, like, if more people saw what was happening and heard more about what was happening and why things are happening that way, I think more people would have their minds changed. But right now, half of the country is fucking brain dead. They haven't been stimulated. They haven't been they haven't been kept informed of what's actually happening. They get pounded nonsense into their head nonstop by figureheads and spokespeople, um, people like fucking I don't know, Steven Crowder, people like
Ben
that,
Shapiro,
and
Ben
Ben Shapiro, sure.
Wapiro, actually.
Um, I would say
Mhm.
that at least the people who watch Ben Shapiro are at least just a tiny bit more politically savvy than your average person.
Well, it's
Um,
Steven
West
Crowder.
Hero.
All Steven Crowder does is like literally say, "Oh,
Complain.
yeah," complain and say, you got sexually assaulted, AOC? Haha, that's funny. That's literally all he fucking does. Like
Yeah, it's pretty
and people
disgusting. And
fucking call
and
him a comedian. People call fucking Steven Crowder a fucking comedian. All he is a high school bully.
yeah,
You
pretty
know?
much he does certainly act like one.
And you
And
know
but
what? You know what though? He's the type of person that will call you the F slur, and then if you say something about his mom, he'll punch you in the fucking face,
Yeah.
and then
I wonder
act
if he
like
wears
he's a victim.
I wonder if he wears adult diapers.
He
I'm just
probably
curious.
fucking does. He probably fucking does.
It's nice of him to wear.
whatever anyone does in the privacy of their own home is none of my fucking
Yeah.
business. But uh, uh, the taxpayers, as long as the taxpayers aren't funding his diaper habits. Um, but I just it's so frustrating because I genuinely think that more people would be on our side if they just knew about the shit that was happening.
Well, and there's a
Like,
lot of propaganda out there. Like, I mean, people like Steven
a
Crowder,
ton,
Ben Shapiro,
an insane amount.
PragerU, they're funded by so much dirty money, oil money. We're talking about, just billions of fucking dollars being pumped into like the alt-right pipeline. We're not getting funded by anyone. We have 2 views right now.
Except for George Soros, of course.
Yes, our Antifa checks are coming in the mail. Yay.
But I mean, like, we derive our political opinions from a fucking 19th century German economist. Like, it it's or was he Austrian? No, he was German, right? Yeah,
I'm
he was German, then was in France for a while.
Well,
Yeah.
there was a very prolific figure who said Austrians were also Germans. So, you know.
Well, I'm not gonna go there, but we're taking a look at it from a perspective that is more academic, and there is a very concerted effort among the elite in this country to rile up the masses against the educated, right?
Well, yeah, not only
Um,
that, but I mean, there's always been a pretty high, a very high level of anti-intellectualism in this country. And I didn't really realize it until like, the whole SJW craze back in like 2015 after Gamergate. Like the whole criticism of like, you got a gender studies degree. How fucking dare you? You should have gotten STEM. You deserve to be in fucking debt. Fuck you. You're not getting a handout. You're a communist, socialist, libtard, SJW cuck. Like,
oh, I'm so sorry. I thought the free market was about people doing whatever the fuck they wanted.
yeah, I thought this was America.
Yeah, I
Like,
thought this was America. If I
yeah,
want to do gender studies, I can do fucking gender studies.
right.
Fuck you, Rodon. Don't you dare fucking bring up that hypocrisy, you piece of shit. No, it's only a free market for the things that I say it's a free market for.
Exactly.
Yeah, and by the way, bakeries can ban gay people from getting cakes, but hey, Twitter cannot ban me for saying the N-word.
Yeah. And I mean, like, there is a very nuanced conversation to be had about like tech censorship and internet censorship. Because I mean, there is a genuine conversation to be had there. Because you can
There
say,
is,
yes,
yeah.
private companies can limit whatever they want because they're private entities, right? Um, but if those private entities have a monopoly on on internet public space, then how do you legislate around that?
Mhm.
What are the rules that you impose on those companies? Like, what can they get rid of and what can't they get rid of? That kind
Right.
of stuff.
And you can talk
So,
about like
you know,
nationalizing, certain services, but yeah, there is a conversation to be had about the fact that, Facebook owns Oculus and owns, Instagram, and how Amazon owns Twitch, and how Google pretty much owns everything. You can have a
and
conversation
Amazon
about that.
or Jeff Bezos also
Mhm.
owns the Washington Post, right?
Right. Yeah, you can
So,
you can have a conversation about the further monopolization of these services. You can talk about, breaking them up. You can talk about nationalizing them. But a lot of Republicans and a lot of conservatives talk about nationalizing these services in bad faith because all they want to do is be able to get away with saying some racist shit or sexist shit or homophobic shit or transphobic shit. Like they don't actually care about making the like they don't care about making things a lot freer. They just care about being able to be hateful without with impunity.
yeah, and like I've brought this up that we do not have to be tolerant of the intolerant. That is a mistake.
Absolutely,
Um,
yeah.
it is a mistake to be tolerant of the intolerant, because then you see what happened in Germany,
Or Italy.
um, or Italy, another good example. But
Hey, I like my pasta puttanesca.
but I genuine, like, even in America we can make that same that same distinction. Being tolerant of the outright crazy bullshit conspiracy theory shit going on, and being tolerant of it to an extent has led us down a path as to where now half the fucking country believes it.
Yeah.
You know, and now
Which
we're in deep
led,
shit.
yeah,
Now we're in
Mm.
deep shit because we
what,
were okay with it to begin
yeah,
with.
which led to a coup, on our capital. And actually, speaking of coups, something crazy happened in Myanmar. And I
Most
wanna
crazy.
I wanna play this video for you guys first. I
It's
don't know
got
if you guys.
music. You might have to mute it.
It was less than 5 seconds.
So
We're good. So yeah. So what's going on here is this aerobics teacher is doing one of her classes. In the background, you see military trucks coming in along with police escort vehicles. Um, during a coup. Like this is like
and it
literally the coup happening in the
this
background of this aerobics lesson, and she's like completely unaware of it.
this is a huge mood, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yes.
an absolute mood, because this this just encapsulates the last year all just condensed into one. She's wearing a mask, she's exercising outside to some happy jaunty music, and there's a fucking coup going on in the background. Like
Mm.
It's
it
great.
just it's just missing a fire, and then it'd be
Yeah.
perfect.
And I'm not gonna lie. I mean, the aerobics exercises look pretty cool too. I mean,
Oh yeah, those
I could see
those
people dancing like this in a nightclub. Well,
yeah, it's kind
not
of like
really.
Yeah.
it's almost like voguing,
Yeah,
almost.
a little bit. But yeah. So this obviously went extremely viral.
Yeah.
Um, and it had more than 67,000 Facebook reactions, 25,000 retweets, and 60,000 likes, which, I mean, for a viral video, that just seems like small
It's
numbers.
probably way bigger at this point.
At this point, yeah,
Mm.
because this article, I mean, this video came out on the 1st of this month, and this article came out yesterday. So,
So I mean, like, and here's the thing is that it's not because of this pandemic and the economic repercussions that it's had. Now, Myanmar has been in a deep, deep pot of trouble for like quite a long time. Um, so this
Decades.
was certainly foreseeable. Um, but economic economic and political conflict across the globe is happening at an unprecedented rate. This is it's insanity. Um, Having a full military backed coup in
yeah.
Myanmar.
Yeah,
Um,
it was a military coup. So I guess there is something like in the constitution of Myanmar saying that the military can take control of their government under times of emergencies, or a national emergency. But that just doesn't seem like that was the case. Okay, so and let's see here. Where's a better article? No, that's. Hold on. No, I don't want you to autoplay. Jesus Christ. Um. Okay, so just days into his tenure, President Joe Biden already is grappling with a foreign policy crisis, a military coup in Myanmar, that could put his administration at odds with China, the country he has identified as America's long-term rival. How Biden and his aides react, whether quickly in concert with allies or with a show of U.S. strength, could affect how the new United States administration is viewed on the global stage in the months ahead, especially as it's presented with broader challenge of confronting the rise of authoritarianism in countries across the globe. So, from my understanding of this, is that there was a democratic election. It didn't go the way, I guess, like the military wanted it to go, so they
great.
overthrew. And I think they cited voter fraud too, which was even
Yes, they did.
funnier.
Ironic. That's so
Yes, they did.
ironic.
Yeah, it's almost like
So
they're like, "Hey, look at what the United States did. Maybe we should try that."
this
Yeah, good
this
idea.
this is a very poignant case of what the United States could have turned into if there was military backing on the 6th. This is scary in multiple ways because this could have just as easily been us.
Have you guys seen the ridiculous charges that they put on Myanmar's president? The reason why
Yes.
they locked her up? Oh my god! And they did the same thing to her. What was it? 5 or 10 years ago? They did this. The same thing happened again.
And walkie-talkies.
So, 3 days later, after Myanmar's military seized power in a coup, a court charged the country's civilian leader, Da Aung San Suu Kyi. I can't pronounce that.
I
I'm
think
American,
it's
so um, with
I
an
think it's
obscure
she.
infraction that could land her in prison for up to 3 years, illegally importing at least 10 walkie-talkies. Which, Aaron, you brought that up earlier.
And so wonderful example of how governing bodies can use the most ridiculous excuse to lock people up. Isn't that interesting?
What's even funnier is she was apparently a Nobel Peace Prize laureate.
She was. And you know
Um,
what's sad though is this is kind of a hard story because to be fair, she's also the one who oversaw or kind of excused her party and her government for committing arguably acts of genocide towards a certain minority. I believe they were
Uyghurs?
Muslims.
Yeah.
No, well,
No,
okay, that's China. That's
not the
China.
Uyghurs. Not the
Oh,
Uyghurs.
okay.
But it was another Muslim minority. And this broke out a couple of years ago or something like that. And her party and her government either ignored it or even sanctioned it. So it's hard to choose even a side in this one because it's like half of me says, well, you know, fuck her, but at the same time, if you're gonna have a coup, and I can't think of a more ridiculous thing to make up a reason to lock up a deposed leader who
Three
just
three
overthrew.
years.
Well, I mean,
Walkie-talkies.
this is what this is what dictatorships and authoritarian governments have done for a long time. We saw it in Stalin's Russia, right? With the ridiculous locking up of journalists and political
Well,
enemies.
apparently she also served a total of 15 years in house arrest before the generals released her in 2010.
Yeah.
And she
So,
still won in a landslide, by the way.
yeah, in one case, had her locked up extended because an American man swam up to her lakeside villa unannounced, causing her to violate the terms of her confinement. What the hell? Wait, so an American.
She discovered Tinder and the whole country freaked out. Okay?
Oh no! What the shit?
Poor thing, she was locked up for years in her house. She's bored.
She's
She's
lonely,
lonely as fuck. Man, and everybody has to get in her fucking business. An American man swam up to her house. Well, no shit. How else is he gonna get to her house when it's all guarded by all these fucking military personnel?
So the generals
But
ordered massacres of. Oh my god. Okay, so this actually gets worse. So maybe I'm skipping a little too much. So Myanmar's military, known as the Tatmadaw, staged its first coup in 1962, a bloody exercise that paved the way for nearly 5 decades of iron-fisted rule. Miss Aung and leading lights of her National League for Democracy were locked up during what could have been their political prime. The generals ordered massacres of pro-democracy demonstrators and dispatched soldiers to clear members of ethnic minority groups off their lands, even when the junta began giving a civilian administration some space to operate and ensured the army would still control much of the economic and political sphere. So it sounds like Myanmar, as a country, has been dealing with. I mean, formerly Burma. I don't think it's called
they,
Burma
Her
anymore.
lifetime.
they've been
Yeah.
under direct military control for decades.
Yeah. So this isn't like this isn't like a new thing. This is something that's been bubbling over for the last at least 50 years.
Yeah.
But the problem is that most of the country and actually most of the world thought that they finally got out of this back in 2010, right?
Mhm.
And then I don't mean to laugh because this is really sad. It's just I think that some of these stories are ridiculous. But
Well, I
Well,
mean,
and I mean, you brought up earlier where like you don't necessarily know what side to be on. I mean, this military coup, it could be way worse. Could be way worse. We don't know, and that's why it's something to keep your eyes on.
I think it's something to watch, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
so let's
But
wait. You do know the reason why they did the coup, right? It was
No.
because of no. Well, you just said it earlier. It was because they thought that the most popular party in the country, led by their president,
Mm-hmm.
somehow stole the election,
Right. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
not only that. I mean, I
despite
said
winning in
no
a
because
landslide.
I don't necessarily understand like the full nuance, of course, but I think a lot of it also had to do with like the military not necessarily getting as much support as they feel like they needed.
so
Well, the military.
sorry, I apologize. As I understand it, um, back in 2010, the military and the political force that is now the civilian political force in Myanmar, um, basically struck a deal with one another that the military would have 25% voting power and the civilian voting bloc would have 75% voting power. But
Why
you
would a
need to
separate
have more
military
than
block would have a
because
sanctioned
they directly controlled the country. Like they
right
were the people in control of the country. So why
for
would they give it
right
up for nothing?
right.
And so, but in order to change any of these rules, in order to change any of this, you have to get more than a 75% vote to change anything constitutionally in Myanmar.
Mm-hmm.
So the military itself um, put in this restriction so that only things can really only be changed in that way when the military also backs it. So
But
it's almost like Republican obstructionism. It's
it,
almost like that.
it is. But see, okay, so the other interesting thing to point out, though, about this specific situation is that the military also had a candidate for president. That was the thing. And that candidate obviously lost. They got way less votes than the incumbent. And a lot of people are saying, well, that's the reason why they're so mad, and they decided to throw this coup because their candidate lost. It just seems so ironic to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is like it's it's an alternate look at what happened in January, you know?
Or
Um,
what could have happened or could have transpired.
yeah, and because I mean we're facing that kind of saying that that kind of political threat.
Yeah. So
Um,
yeah, we've been talking about a lot of like happy fun topics today.
yes.
And I just wanted to end the episode with one last story that will make everyone go to sleep feeling very hopeful for the human race. Um
Go.
just,
Looking forward to it.
yeah, this is going to just fill your heart with just butterflies and flowers and oh, no, I was wrong. Rochester mayor suspends police officers who pepper sprayed 9-year-old girl. Um
Okay, I'll wait till they're fired.
they were suspended um as of today. But apparently what ended up happening was police arrived for a domestic dispute. Um family trouble at a residence in North Rochester just before 3:30 p.m. The 9-year-old girl who was pepper sprayed said she wanted to kill herself, and her mother, Anderson said, and officers at the scene made an effort to try to secure her. Quote. Um, he said her mother was also involved. An officer decided to try to move the child to a police vehicle so that she could be transferred to a hospital, but the child thrashed around. Remember, this is a 9-year-old. A 9-year-old that where there were police officers for a domestic dispute. Obviously, a very traumatic experience for her. Um, from what was observed, it didn't appear as if she was resisting the officer. Anderson said she was trying not to be restrained to go to the hospital. The officer warned camera footage which contains graphic language and disturbing images shows the officers trying to restrain the girl as she falls in the snow. The officers put handcuffs on her as she screams out repeatedly, "I want my dad." In a separate video released by police, it appears that 6 police vehicles arrive at the scene. As law enforcement officers try to get the girl into the patrol car, she pleads with officers to get the snow off of her. She screams again and again for her father and says her arms is hurting. One of the officers says to her, "You're acting like a child." And she retorts back by saying, "I am a child," because, of course, a 9-year-old is a fucking child. The
Yeah,
girl
to
who.
to to
um,
accurately quote her, she said, "I am a child." The fuck?
mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, like,
The
I was like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, a female. This is where it gets even worse. A female officer arrives and implores the girl to comply. "This is your last chance, or pepper spray is going in your eyeballs. Come on," the female officer says. Few seconds later, the girl screams and as she is hit with pepper spray and then begs officers to wipe her eyes. It isn't clear which officer sprayed the eye irritant. One of the officers at the end exclaimed, "Unbelievable," in reference,
And
obviously, to the child
yeah, it
behaving
was
like a
in reference
child.
to the child behavior, not to them pepper
Right.
spraying a 9-year-old girl in the face.
Um, I wanted to just bring this up. I'm not gonna show the video footage because it's. I mean, I couldn't really. I couldn't watch it.
I
Um,
watched it
yeah.
so that I would be more informed about it.
But well, I mean, that's not entirely. I listened to it. I was watching the majority report, but I
Mhm.
just couldn't watch it physically. It was it just. I mean, I'm disgusted.
Now,
And none of these
like,
officers have been fired. They've been suspended, but none of them has been
here's the
fired.
major
And the
major
fun
problem.
and the funny thing is, they're doing another internal police investigation. This is not too long after George Floyd or Breonna Taylor. Y-
Um,
uh,
well,
uh,
yeah, certainly. I do think that conflating murder with this is maybe a tad too much, but it is certainly
this is a
police brutality.
9-year-old girl, though. I mean, her life. She's
I'm
not going
saying
to
it's
be the
police
same
brutality.
person.
Absolutely.
Like
And
I
yeah, I'm
I
saying that it's
will.
police brutality.
I'm going to say it is under the same purview of murder. You are essentially traumatizing someone to the point that what they could have been growing up has radically changed. This event in her life completely disrupts everything for her in the future. Everything. Yeah, so yeah,
I
I would say that this falls under the, purview. Because what if she was older? What if she was 16? What if she was 30? We
it
already
wouldn't be
know
right.
that people typically age up African Americans. This is a sociologically verifiable fact that people this is a part of how they're discriminated against, and this is and things like that leads up to a 9-year-old getting pepper sprayed by police, getting thrashed around in the snow, thrown on the ground, and then handcuffed.
Yeah, and it's completely inexcusable.
Like
Um,
I would say that, this is under the same purview. It because like I said, what if she were older? What if she were in her 30s? What if she were 16, you know?
and yeah, you certainly have a point. When I'm really sick and tired of seeing police act like they're playing Simon Says with whomever they're trying to speak with or whoever they're trying to arrest, detain, what have you. Okay? I'm really sick of this. If you don't follow my words to the letter, then I'm going to beat the shit out of you. I'm really fucking sick of that. They're here to protect and serve us, not to beat the shit out of us when we don't do exactly what they tell us to. Okay?
Well,
They are acting like they have supreme power over us, and if we fight back, we go to jail.
a
We go to
McDonald's
jail.
employee who's getting paid $8 an hour has a lot more training when it comes to de-escalating situations. I mean, if I even like when I worked at Subway as a goddamn sandwich artist, and I even so as much raised my tone at a customer who's cussing me out, I would have lost my minimum wage job. But
Mm-hmm.
this fucking these 6 pieces of shit go on suspension while an internal investigation is conducted.
You
Which
don't need an internal investigation. These are cameras directly from the officers' cameras, and you can see exactly what they do. You can see exactly how they handle the situation, how they
right.
respond to the girl, right? And and while there were attempts to calm her down, at a certain point, they just gave the fuck up and just started yelling and shouting and screaming at her.
Which makes it
And
worse. That it's like
she's
it's
a
literally
child.
it's
She's a child.
like what the police officers employed on her is exactly how an abusive parent reacts to their child if they're not listening to something properly. It's like, if your mom tells you you need to clean your room and you don't clean your room and she comes in your room and picks you up and slams you on the fucking ground. That's literally what this is. I mean, it's no like the amount of trauma caused by it's I mean, it's I would equivocate the two. Absolutely. It's literal abuse. It's traumatic. That like this shit destroys lives. And it's like why is it that, the police are just not held accountable for what they do? Why aren't they, what like this is an ongoing thing. We've been having conversations about police brutality since the civil rights era. You know, as early as, Rodney King in LA, and that was in the early 90s, you know? Like that was my first level of like awareness of police brutality, you know? Like my first understanding of historical evidence of police brutality on a that shook the US nationally. News of police brutality that shook us on a national scale. We've
And
been
and
having
and
these
it's a
conversations for decades at this point, and nothing's been done.
and it comes as no surprise to leftists that this is continuing to happen and will continue to happen even in spite of the BLM protests of last year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because the police system and the justice system is so entrenched and ingrained in violence that they can't seem to handle situations without it. Why,
Right.
why can I see a cop have endless fucking patience for a, you know, seemingly rich white woman who's being a total cunt in a store or whatever? Why do I see endless patience for them, and I see a 9-year-old little black girl get pepper sprayed in the eyes because she, doesn't want to be physically restrained and put into the back of a cop car?
As they're taking her dad away during a domestic issue, like these are the situations like these are exactly why we need like social workers instead of armed thugs. Like
Yeah, because
like
I mean that's what the police are. They're armed
yeah.
thugs that are at the behest of the state and special interest to protect capital. That's what they're about. They don't give a shit about upholding the law. That's not what it's about. That's not what it's about. It's about protecting the vested interests of the elites, and it's about keeping the right people down.
Yep.
And
Um.
the system is unconscionable.
Yeah.
We can't
No.
have it.
It.
This will
God.
continue to be a problem until we get rid of it. It needs to be completely transformed.
Absolutely. Well. I think we're gonna end it here.
Well,
But
Aaron, do you have any last thoughts?
No, you both covered it actually very well.
yeah. But yeah. No. Yeah, so I think we're gonna be doing this every Wednesday and Sunday now. And we should be having clips of this episode posted on YouTube as well, so things should be a little bit more accessible so that people don't have to sit through a 1.5 hour video if they don't want to. Follow us on our social medias. Our Facebook page, we just created it, is in the description below. Feel free to subscribe to our channel, give our video a thumbs up. And yeah, we really hope to see you guys on Sunday.
And remember, the more activity that we get from you guys, the more feedback that we get from you guys, the more we know what we should talk about, what you guys want to hear about. Give us that feedback. Give us a thumbs up, give us a comment. It really helps us out because the algorithm, number 1, and number 2, we know how to better cater to you guys and give you what you want to see.
Not only
Also,
that,
join us live, like
Yeah,
yeah,
live.
yeah,
which is
yeah.
also nice.
Join our chat. Like, even if there's only 2 people watching this, like, seriously, like, hop on the chat, ask questions. We're more than willing to be interactive. But
And
I
we
mean,
and right now we're still doing Sunday at 6:30 and
mm-hmm,
then Wednesday at 7.
yes,
And this is Pacific Standard Time.
mm-hmm. So your mileage may vary wherever you're at. But yeah, no, we hope everyone has a great night. And yeah, no, thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
No,
thanks.
absolutely. All right.